January on the Schlei Inlet, the year 953. The trading town of Hedeby hunches behind its earthen rampart, hearth smoke pinned flat over the rooftops, the harbor ice groaning as the tide works beneath it. At a trestle table by the jetty, a farmer from the Jutland uplands stands over a row of swords, a whole winter of silver knotted into his belt. The price of one blade equals 7 head of cattle, and he can afford exactly one. He has no laboratory, no spectrometer, no certificate of origin, no way to see one finger's width into the steel he is about to bet his life on. 2 of the blades on that table are lying to him, and yet buyers like him, on tables like this one, walked away with the genuine article far more often than chance allows, because behind the sword stood a web of tests, roots, and guarantees 1,000 years ahead of schedule. This is the story of how that web worked, wound back one strand at a time. The last strand is the strangest. It weighs nothing, and it cost the most. Look at the table. Would your eye have caught the fakes? Archaeologists have pulled about 170 of these swords out of rivers, graves, and plowed fields, scattered from Ireland to the Russian river country, and everyone carries the same word spelled in iron: Ulfberht. They date from the 800s to the early 1000s, 2 full centuries of production, 7 generations of smiths under a single unchanging name. Norway alone has yielded dozens. Others surfaced in Finnish forest graves, in the Thames mud, in riverbeds along the eastern trade roads, hauled up by dredgers 1,000 years after they sank. Frankish law tells you what one was worth. The Lex Ribuaria prices a sword with scabbard at 7 gold solidi, the value of 7 sound cattle, more than a mail shirt cost. A farmer did not buy one twice, but the number that should stop you is metallurgical, not monetary. When the finest of these blades were finally opened up in a modern lab, the steel inside was of a kind Europe could not produce again until Benjamin Huntsman sealed his clay pots of blister steel in a Sheffield furnace in the 1740s. The better part of 800 years after the last genuine Ulfberht cooled. Hold the movie version up against that fact, and it falls apart. The cinema sword is a sharpened crowbar in the fist of a screaming berserker. The cozier legend gives you one bearded smith at a village forge, coaxing a masterpiece out of bog iron and stubbornness. Neither survives contact with the evidence. What the evidence shows is an industry, imported raw material, specialist forging, a protected brand, and a counterfeiting problem serious enough to kill customers. The people who made and bought these blades were not brutes with good luck. They were participants in the longest quality control chain of the early Middle Ages, and it ran on layers, each more clever than the last. Start with what the microscope saw. In the workshops of the Wallace Collection in London, the archaeometallurgist Alan Williams cut samples from dozens of early medieval blades, polished them to a mirror, and read the metal like a page. Ordinary swords of the period are full of shadows, dark glassy threads of slag trapped in the iron, carbon scattered in patches, hard here, soft 2 fingers along. That is the signature of the bloomery, the furnace every European smith depended on. Picture the process: a clay shaft packed with roasted ore and charcoal, bellows worked in shifts through a day and a night, all to win a few kilograms of usable metal. A bloomery burning charcoal tops out around 1150 degrees Celsius. Iron does not melt until 1538. The metal never becomes liquid. It forms as a spongy, glowing mass tangled with waste rock, and the smith spends days folding and hammering the filth out, never getting all of it, never controlling how much carbon soaks in where. Carbon is the whole game. At around 1%, evenly spread, steel takes a hard edge that keeps its bite, yet can be tempered back from brittleness. Too little, and the edge folds. Too much in one patch, and it shatters there first. The bloomery handed out carbon like dice. If you have ever sharpened an old knife and felt the edge crumble at one spot and fold at another, you have met uneven steel with your own hands. Now the anomaly. A fraction of the Ulfberht blades Williams tested showed almost no slag at all, with carbon near 1%, roughly 3 times an ordinary blade of the day, spread evenly from point to tang. Steel that clean has only one explanation. Somewhere, this metal had been fully molten, so the slag floated free, and the carbon dissolved through it like salt in water. Melted, in a Europe whose furnaces stopped 400 degrees short. Modern industry still ranks steel by exactly this cleanliness. The alloys spun inside jet engines are remelted in vacuum chambers to chase out the same inclusions. Williams was looking at aerospace logic, executed before the millennium turned. The question was where on earth it had been done. The answer lay 5,000 kilometers east of any Frankish forge, at Merv, the great oasis city in what is now Turkmenistan. Excavations studied by the archaeometallurgist Anne Feuerbach uncovered workshops from the 9th to 11th centuries built around a different idea entirely: the crucible. Smiths there packed fist-sized clay vessels with iron, charcoal, and crushed glass, sealed them shut, and buried them in beds of burning charcoal driven by bellows until the contents passed 1,400 degrees and melted outright. Then let them cool slowly, sometimes for days. The glass was not decoration. Molten, it spread across the surface like a lid, locking out air and drawing impurities into itself, a flux chemists still use. Crack the pot, and you held a cake of glass-clean, high-carbon steel about the size of a hockey puck, a product so standardized that identical cakes have been found waiting in workshop ruins like stock on a shelf. Workshops at Aksikhet in the Ferghana Valley, along the road to Samarkand, made the same product at scale, and when Williams compared their chemistry with his cleanest Ulfberht samples, the signatures aligned. The postscript makes the point about difficulty better than any adjective. When Benjamin Huntsman finally recreated the method in Sheffield, he was a clockmaker chasing better springs, and he arrived, after years of failed trials, at sealed clay pots, a coked furnace, and a slow cool. The same recipe, reinvented with 8 centuries of interest. Not every scholar reads the evidence identically, and the disagreement is worth having. One camp holds that crucible ingots traveled west as trade goods, and Frankish smiths forged them into blades. Another argues that a handful of European bloomery masters learned to push carbon high by manipulating tall furnaces and long roasts, no imports required. Brilliance homegrown rather than bought. The chemistry currently leans east, but archaeology has flipped confident verdicts before. I read every comment on these videos. Tell me which account you would stake your silver on, and why. If the steel was born near Samarkand, it reached the north the same way everything else did, by water. The corridor began at Staraya Ladoga, the timber emporium the Norse called Aldigjuborg, just off Lake Ladoga, the doorway where Baltic ships met the Russian rivers. From there, boats worked up the Volkhov, dragged across portages on log rollers, and dropped into the Volga's long slide toward the Caspian Sea, where caravan country began. Nothing about the passage was casual. Rapids that ate hulls, overland hauls where a crew carried boat and cargo both, tolls at every strong point, and a season barely 5 months wide before ice closed the rivers like a door. Goods that made the full journey had earned their price twice over. The proof of the corridor's traffic is buried across Scandinavia in silver, Arab dirham coins by the 100,000, struck in mints from Baghdad to Tashkent, dug out of northern soil hoard after hoard. Down that same corridor, a crucible cake was a smuggler's dream, a fortune folded into a kilogram, riding under the floorboards as ballast, no more conspicuous than a river stone. A boat that carried furs north and silver south could tuck a winter's worth of sword steel into its bilge, and no toll-keeper the wiser. And the swords themselves trace the route in reverse. When the Norwegian scholar Anne Stalsberg catalogued every known Ulfberht, the fine spots ran down the river roads of Old Rus like beads on a string. If you have ever waited a month for one machine part to clear 3 borders, you know precisely what was at stake in every portage and every toll. This was a supply chain in the full modern sense. Material smelted in Central Asia, worked in Francia, sold in Scandinavia. The way your phone is designed on one continent, fabricated on a second, assembled on a third. If unwinding a 1,000-year-old supply chain beats another shield wall montage for you, tap the like button. It is the clearest signal I get about what to dig into next. Getting the steel was half the miracle. Working it was the other half, because high-carbon steel is a tyrant at the anvil. Hold it in the fire too long, and the carbon that makes it special burns away. Push it too hot, and the grain coarsens until the blade will snap like a winter branch. Quench it carelessly, and it cracks apart in the water. And the smith had no pyrometer. He read temperature by the color of glowing metal in a darkened smithy, cherry to orange to lemon, and judged his temper by the oxide sheen creeping along a polished surface, straw to bronze to plum. Smithies were dark on purpose. Daylight washes out the colors, and the colors were the instrument panel. Every degree of judgment lived in a man's eyes. In 2012, the American master smith Richard Furrer forged a faithful Ulfberht for the documentary record using period-plausible methods, and it consumed days of continuous, error-free labor. One of the few living people who could manage it, by his own account, working at the edge of ruin the entire time. Older northern blades had solved the materials problem by composition instead. Pattern welding, where smiths twisted rods of hard and soft iron together and forged them into one blade, strength braided out of weakness, the surface swirling like water where the layers met. It was gorgeous, laborious, and a workaround. Steel as clean as the Ulfberts simply did not need the trick, and on the finest of them, the old serpentine patterns disappear. The material itself had caught up with the idea. The finished object explains the rest of the effort. A groove down the blade's spine, the fuller, sheds roughly a quarter of the weight while barely costing stiffness, the same reasoning that puts I-beams under bridges. The blade thins by stages toward the point, pulling the balance to a hand's width above the guard, so a meter of double-edged steel comes in near 1,200 grams, lighter than the laptop in your bag, and moves from the wrist instead of the shoulder. Flex a true one, and it springs back arrow straight. If you have ever tempered a chisel and watched the colors run, you have played the smallest version of this game. Now scale it to a meter of steel worth 7 cattle, where one lapse of attention erases a month of wages. Every layer to this point you could weigh in your hand. The last one has no mass at all, and it may have mattered most. Those letters, Ulfberht, bracketed by crosses, were not scratched or painted on. The smiths forged the name into the blade, hammer welding rods of twisted pattern iron into the hot fuller, until word and weapon were one object, legible after 1,000 years of rust. Ulfberht is a Frankish man's name, but no man forges for 2 centuries. The name outlived any possible bearer, which means it worked as something new to Northern Europe. A brand, a maker's mark carrying a guarantee, passed down through a workshop, very likely several workshops, the way a master mark passes through a guild. Whoever held the name held its reputation in trust, and one bad blade could spend what generations had banked. Most buyers could not read. They knew the mark the way you know a logo at 50 paces, by shape and rhythm, and the shape held a checksum. On the genuine article, the second cross sits inside the word before the final T, while most counterfeits drift it to the end. Small comfort, since the fake beneath the misplaced cross was usually honest bloomery steel dressed in a famous name, liable to fail exactly when failure could not be survived. The forgeries tell you the brand had teeth, and so does the law. Charlemagne's capitulary of 805 banned the export of Frankish weapons outright, and the Edict of Pistres in 864 made selling arms to the Northmen a capital offense, which did not stop the trade, only priced the risk in, the way a smuggled good always costs more. A name that promised clean steel, policed by nothing but reputation across 2,000 kilometers of rivers and sea. We run the same system today with hologram stickers and serial numbers on aircraft bolts, and for the same reason. A trusted mark is compressed information. Someone staked their name so you would not have to cut the metal open. Set the finished sword back on that trestle table at Hedeby and read it in reverse. Steel melted to glass cleanness in clay pots near the Ferghana Valley. A river road of portages and toll stations moving fortune-dense cargo 4,000 kilometers. Frankish forgecraft that could shape a tyrannical alloy without ruining it. And wrapped around all of it, a name that functioned as law where no law reached. Pull out any one strand, and the whole thing collapses. The steel without the root stays a curiosity of Merv. The root without the brand delivers beautiful fakes. The brand without the forgecraft is a lie in iron letters. Empires were not required. No emperor commanded the crucible fires of Ferghana, the portage crews on the Volkhof, and the forges of the Rhineland to cooperate. The sword's own reputation paid each of them link by link for 200 years. The Ulfberht was not a weapon that happened to be well made. It was a functioning international system you could hold in one hand, run without a single government spanning its length. Today, the same guarantee takes an electric furnace, a spectrometer, and an ISO certificate. They did it with clay pots, riverboats, and a reputation nobody dared waste. That is the Viking age this channel is built around. The Norse as buyers, testers, and quality engineers, rather than extras in a raid scene. And if that is the version of history you want showing up in your feed, subscribing is how you tell me to keep going. So, the next time you turn a product over to check for the certification stamp, the hologram, the serial number, the little mark that says someone answers for this, remember the farmer on the frozen jetty, reading 3 strokes of iron and a cross set 1 letter early. His whole world fit in that detail. Anyone could copy the letters. No one could copy the system.